Oh no, it's the Dharma from As the God's Will. Everyone stay perfectly still until he turns around, or else... Told you so. Continuing right where we left off from last week, Kaoru off screen had learned about where her skirt came from and dealt with her frustrations in the most sensible way. If she were the Gao. Fortunately, before she transformed everyone into light, they depowered her with the same device from the last episode. With that, the three depowered puffs got to know each other a little better over some gummy treats. Well, if at all possible, please don't put that stuff in your morning yogurt. I'm not kidding, the current Precure series is actually encouraging this. I guess this franchise doesn't really care about nutrition anymore, does it? This gave Momoko the opportunity to show off more of her nerdy side for superheroes, including doing some rider poses, or at least a kid's attempt at the poses. Yeah, you should probably take some lessons from Decado. All three ended up expositing about their superhero alter egos, with Kaoru, of course, still being hung up on the skirt. That said, this isn't a bad way of establishing her character. While the original Buttercup wasn't against wearing skirts, she is also very clearly butch and no, not yet, as portrayed through some of her rougher tendencies like refusing to bathe, enjoying physical activities more, and of course being the most aggressive of her team. This was likely due to her getting a heavier amount of spice mixed into her, as indicated by the opening matching with her color during this cut. Her tomboyishness was literally baked into her, and we just kind of accepted this because it was clearly a part of her origins. Meanwhile, in the case of the human Kaoru, they chose to portray her with slightly more stock, but also relatable traits associated with the traditional tomboy. It's an effective adjustment to a character who, while still very similar to the original, also has a very different origin, and thus they do need to be a little bit more aggressive with their character establishment. We got some further introductions, with each of the girls revealing that they knew at least a little bit about each other, and as a result, they realized they all went to the same school. Kaoru in particular knew about her new friends, as she tried to actively avoid hanging out what she perceived as the very girly types like them. I mean, to be fair, she's not exactly wrong about not trusting the overly cutesy types. This would of course complicate things, as the mayor wanted them to work as a team. Not that they realized that this guy was the mayor first, and in fact thought he was everything else from a grocer to a barber. I mean, come on, the only thing more ridiculous is mistaking a mayor for, say, a pro wrestler or... Never mind. Fortunately, the ever-faceless Miss Bellum cleared things up, and yeah, it took a bit of a while before we could finally introduce her. Though I will say, even if she does have a smaller role and isn't a redhead in this continuity, at least she's actually a part of the show. Though as I said, Kaoru wasn't on board with teaming with anyone, especially after they all start going off on their own about a Chinese restaurant of all things. So of course, the only way to fix things would be to force her into another transformation thanks to Peach. Understandably, Kaoru wasn't happy with the little robot dog and tried to dismantle him. This led into a fun little chase sequence with all three of the girls. Okay, now this is really starting to feel like the OG. Eventually, they did manage to subdue her thanks to the power of curtains. And apparently, trying to kill an eyeball was a good stress reliever, as Kaoru was more receptive to join the team, if only because she enjoyed using her new superpowers. With that, the Powerpuff Girls Z was established, and Miss Bellum assigned them a few basic rules to keep them in line. However, in exchange, the girls themselves made their own set of very selfish rules. I just say watch the highlights on YouTube. Entering into the second half of the episode, each of the girls head off to school with their bento lunches, which yes will become a plot point, and met up to discuss things that would become more relevant in the next episode. They would need to do this before school, as they went to different homerooms until later that day. Thanks to the mayor, they all ended up in the same class, with of course Keen Sensei, who made it a point to tell her students that she was single. Man, whoever thought that Hazuki would take after Seki Sensei? There was also some other girl with a very distinctive design, but I'm sure she won't become relevant later. During lunch, they all decided to eat together, but duty ended up calling as Mojo was ruining other people's lunches both by eating their food and likely spoiling a lot of appetites. Still better than some modern Precure catchphrases. Wanting to eat their lunches before their break was over, they quickly transformed and confronted the cross-dressing monkey. Their fight ended up at the docks, where Mojo managed to show off his Half-Life 2 skills. During all of this, we saw more of the limitations of the human Powerpuffs as they were running low on calories. Fortunately, Mojo bragging about his lunch gave them a little more motivation to let out their frustrations. Yet, he still wasn't done and just had a battle boat ready to go, complete with custom missiles. Contrivances aside, this did lead into a pretty cool sequence as each of the girls used their unique abilities to return the missiles back to their sender. And yeah, the animation in this episode, while still nothing spectacular, was at least looking significantly better, especially here. With that, they sent Mojo blasting off again, and ended things in probably one of the most magical girl ways possible by racing back to school in the hopes that they could still make lunch. As the last of the introduction episodes for this team, this was arguably the strongest. The Buttercup of this team managed to get a lot of her personality across, we got some proper introductions to the school setting, and we even got some better than usual animation with plenty of destruction, which of course is a bit of a cornerstone for any PPG property. I guess it was only appropriate that this would be the first episode to take advantage of the school setting, as it was written by longtime Ojamajo Doremi and OG Precure writer Yumi Kageyama. The fact that the girls' motivations for the latter half of the episode were their lunches definitely felt like something out of one of her Doremi episodes. In general, this episode had a lot of fun, yet kind of insightful bits for each of our characters. Kaoru especially got some good spotlighting, showing off of course her tomboy side, and also her straight man side that she justifiably had a hard time interacting with this group of weirdos. As a result, it did help to balance out this cast who did have a tendency to trail off into their own little worlds. They also, thankfully, didn't play up her tomboyishness as a one-note trait, showing that she did have legitimate reasons for avoiding what she perceived as overly girly stuff, as she just kind of wanted to do her own thing. Yes, she did have a bit of an obsessive aversion to skirts, but she also wasn't above compromising when shown some of the pros of wearing it a little. Of course, the whole bit of getting her to realize this was probably the best part of the episode, as not only was it the most well-animated sequence so far, but it was also hilarious and called back to its source material and even a little bit to Dexter's Lab. It did kind of overshadow the fight with Mojo as a result, but that was still pretty fun in its own way, again considering that their ultimate goals were their lunches. Overall, this was a much stronger character introduction episode than previously, but it was also still a fun little romp with animation that was improving. And obviously, there are a few more things to look forward to in the near future. Last week, I managed to do something fantastic and got my AC fixed. Yeah, believe me, that's a huge issue that anyone would need to take care of ASAP when you live in Hawaii. As a result, my productivity is starting to return to normal, so do expect some of my bigger projects to finally come out soon. Look forward to all of that. Until then though, farewell for now my friends, and yeah, I'd better start cleaning up all of these blood marbles. Why is it some people just can't play red like green light?